This afternoon, JSO family mourning the death of one of their own. Lieutenant Chris Cunningham died after being hospitalized with coronavirus. He spent more than 2 decades on the force and sadly leaves behind a wife and children. Renata DiGregorio on your side with how Lieutenant Cunningham is being remembered.
A father, husband, and public servant in a job he loved. For more than 20 years, Lieutenant Chris Cunningham served this community. Now those who knew him say it doesn't feel real that he's gone. Cunningham's son Cameron describes his father as having the heart of a lion, and his roar will forever live on. Lieutenant Chris Cunningham was a Navy veteran who was 48 years old. Cameron says he did not have health complications and jogged every day. Cunningham's sons posted tributes to him online. In several, his son, who shares his name, writes directly to his dad. His son writes that he never thought it would end up like this when his father was admitted to the hospital. He asks his dad to watch over his family. Local law enforcement officers online remember Cunningham for his commitment to being a public servant. He was the commanding officer of the crime scene unit, Latent Prints, and the photo lab. Sheriff Mike Williams writes in a statement that Cunningham's death was unexpected and writes, "His mark on all of us that worked with him is indelible." Local law enforcement agencies say they'll always support Cunningham's family, and they all ask for your thoughts moving forward. In Jacksonville, Renata DiGregorio, First Coast News, on your side.
And Renata, we appreciate that. JSO officers are telling us they are now working with his family on specific funeral arrangements.